All right, IU fans, interesting week to say the least. Since our last episode, Indiana defended their home court against Illinois. And then on Tuesday night, a game where not many teams would have won going into Michigan State under those circumstances, Indiana lost. And for some people, they are quite livid at how Indiana played. How do we feel? We're going to dive in to how Indiana played over the course of the last week, talking about the win over Illinois, reacting to the defeat at Michigan State, preview Saturday's massive showdown at Purdue in prime time on Fox, and talk about the Indiana women's team clinching the Big Ten title outright, and so much more here on episode 285 of the Hoosier Sound. We're the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, where I'm your host, Nathan Krishnan. Here with me tonight are my normal co-hosts, Matt Lukens, and our Indiana HQ, boots on the ground contributor, Charlie Mason, coming to you from Bloomington. Charlie, we're going to start with the women's team, all right? That's the team that only lost one game all season. That's the team that's second currently in the AP poll. That's the team that filled out Assembly Hall and cut down the nets on Sunday afternoon. The Hoosiers, led by Teri Moren and Mackenzie Holmes and Grace Berger, and that entire squad knocked off Purdue by double digits on Sunday. And then, by virtue of Maryland's win over Iowa yesterday, that is Tuesday night in Big Ten play, the Hoosiers clinched the Big Ten title outright. It's their second ever conference title, the first one in 40 years. I mean, Charlie, what an awesome story this is. What an outstanding season for this program. So much still to play for. Talk to me about your thoughts about this women's team, and especially what's campus like right now in celebrating this team's success.
Let me just start out by saying that right now at IU, the women's team is getting so much more hype than the men's team is. I mean, it's crazy. It's something I've never seen before, and it's awesome and very well deserved. I was driving past the stadium the other day, and somebody was like, "Hey, like, why is it so packed? Like, the men don't play until like I don't know, like Tuesday, Saturday." And somebody's like, "Dude, the women's team is playing." And they were like, "Oh man, aren't they like number one in the nation?" Like people are going crazy. It's just the atmosphere here is incredible. A lot of people that I'm friends with are streaming the women's game over the men's game. They kind of just check their phone for the men's game. It's a really fun thing to be a part of and watch because it's a deep team. It's a team that I don't think a lot of people can match up against too well. But wow, just the energy and the shift from men's basketball to women's basketball, the focus, the spotlight right now, a lot of things going right for women's basketball here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the men's team is all too shabby. But with that said, there's no question that it's great to hear that one of the best teams in the country, according to one voter in the AP poll, the best team in the country, is getting their proper love and respect at home in Bloomington. Now, the crowds have never been this way before, but I will say Indiana women's basketball has always had kind of this community, tight-knit feeling. Now you're just seeing that love spread across Bloomington, across America, around the world, if you look at some of our followers over at Indiana HQ. Matt, what more can you say about Mackenzie Holmes and Sydney Parrish and Yarden Garzone and Sarah Scalia, Chloe Moore McNeil? Teri Moren runs the show. I mean, what are the lessons that you've learned by watching this team that have almost changed the way you look at basketball? What has really stood out to you as you watch this Indiana women's program romp their way to a 26-1 record thus far?
Look, I'm not gonna come to you and say that I've learned something groundbreaking from this team. I think when you add a team or you have a team, I guess, that has a National Player of the Year candidate, Mackenzie Holmes, and another, you could probably put another one on that list, Grace Berger, and then you have you bring in a five-star transfer at Sydney Parrish, you bring in a top international recruit in Yarden Garzon, and then you bring in Minnesota's all-time three-point shooter in Sarah Scalia. And oh yeah, you also have a former five-star recruit or high four-star in Chloe Moore McNeil. It's a loaded team, right? This is a team whose roster construction reminds me a lot of when you go look at Kansas in the men's side. You go look at what Kentucky tries to put together, right? Keywords tries, but it's like a loaded roster that has 5, 6, 7 superstars, right? Or star players. Combined with superstars.
Reminds me of the peak Jay Wright Villanova squads.
Exactly. It's a top heavy squad that has some young and bright depth, but some really just some heavy hitters and some people you can rely on. And that's a foundation for success. But I think what highlights my not just love for this team, but my appreciation for the squad really lies in there was a post that Jordan Sperber tweeted it out. And it was about Indiana's men's team stealing a play from the women's team. And everybody in the comments going, wow, that's so smart. I never thought of that. And it's like, duh. Women's basketball is one of the more pure, if probably the purest form of basketball there is, because the physical, the physical elements, right? The size difference. You don't have a 7'4" Zach Edey that completely ruins your game plan. Right. You don't have a Trace Jackson Davis that can block every shot within 5 feet of him. You don't have these. I mean, you do have these incredible 3-point shooters, but everybody is at a more similar physical stature, right? And everybody's in a same sort of bracket. So it all comes down to tactics and what you're running, and are you executing at a high level, and are you being consistent, and are you trusting your teammates more so than just pure talent gap, pure athleticism, right? Which you can get away with in the men's game. So you go watch the sets that they run this team, whether it's some version of a Spain pick and roll. You go and watch whether it's some sort of a UCLA screen. You can just go up and down the list of things that this team runs. That Coach Moren obviously is a basketball genius, and you kind of get an appreciation for not just this team, but the game of basketball and how beautiful it can be when it's executed correctly. It also makes me a little bit bitter when I watch the men's team being unable to run simple pick and rolls. But
we're not comparing.
All that aside, this is an elite team. We've stated that before. Charlie just brought it up. That the campus is ablaze with love for this team. But even more than that, they're a beacon of hope and brightness in the basketball world, because you can watch this team and they run really fun, really well executed stuff at the right time. They're just a great team to watch. And if they were running the same stuff in the men's game, they would get the same plaudits probably. It's just they're fun to watch. They execute well, and it'll give them a shot against anybody outside of maybe South Carolina.
Well, we'll see, right? Give them a shot.
They will have a shot. See. I need Indiana women's basketball and Indiana basketball fans to understand this. When I tell you that South Carolina is built like those UConn teams that just went undefeated for multiple years, it will be extremely hard
and the strength
for this Indiana women's basketball team if they end up either on the same side of the bracket in the Final Four, or even playing them in the national championship game if they get that far. It would take a monumental effort from IU to even beat them, and IU has one loss and is the second best women's team in the country. That is how good South Carolina is, and
I think Indiana is clearly
the second best team in the country.
I don't think there's a debate. I don't think you can argue Stanford. I don't think you can argue UConn. I don't think you can argue Utah or whoever. Like, I don't think there's any debate. I don't think you can argue Iowa, especially after the loss yesterday to Maryland. Indiana, to me, is a clear-cut second best team in the country, which is an incredible it's an incredible accomplishment. By the way, right now, if you have DraftKings or FanDuel sportsbooks available in your state, Indiana's women's team is plus 1,000 to win it all, which is actually the fourth best odds in the field. And I think there's value there. And I'm not saying, look, Indiana's going to do it, but I just think if you're giving me plus 1,000, 10 to 1 on Indiana running the table, and I understand UConn's a little banged up, but, even if UConn returns full strength, I like Indiana's chances in that game in a potential Sweet 16 Elite Eight Final Four matchup ahead of that South Carolina game. This is fascinating to see this team in this position. I mean, what would you react like if I told you the Indiana football program was consistently a top 10 or a top 5 or a top 2 program? Like, you'd be crazy, you'd be crazy, you'd be beside yourself. You're like, who's this lunatic talking to you? But this is about the exact same type of scenario. Before Teri Moren took over, Indiana reached a peak of 22nd in the AP top 25 before Teri Moren took over. Okay. And what's interesting is the coach that got them there is the previous coach. His name is Curt Miller. And Miller left Indiana due to personal issue. Now, what's interesting is you followed Curt Miller's career since he left Indiana. He is now one of the most respected minds in the game of women's basketball, where he has coached a number of playoff level WNBA teams at the highest level. And you take that and you say, wow, how can someone so great leave Indiana? And somehow, some way, Teri Moren has stepped in and vastly elevated the level of this program. That's exactly the kind of conversation that we have to talk about now because of what Teri Moren has accomplished as Indiana's head coach. And what I've learned is the power of consistency and steady progress in the world of college basketball. I think so frequently we want to see these rapid turnarounds where a new guy takes over and leads a team into the Final Four in year one. And Teri Moren accomplished so much early in her Indiana career, consistently getting to 21 wins, 23 wins, 23 wins. Then you saw it go to 24. And then you saw Indiana ranked in the top 25 every week. And then you saw Indiana host NCAA tournament games. And now you're seeing the pinnacle of that success. It was an absolutely awesome scene to watch Indiana destroy Purdue over the course of 4 quarters in that game on Sunday, eventually cutting down the nets. Full congratulations to the program. Scott Dolson at the very top. Pamela Whitten was in Bloomington on Sunday at Assembly Hall watching that game. So I guess even pushing it all the way up to the very, very peak of the mountain as far as Indiana's hierarchy is concerned. But Teri Moren, the players, Mackenzie Holmes, every time someone ignores her for National Player of the Year conversation, an angel dies somewhere. It's an absolute disgrace whenever you see Holmes excluded from the mix of players who should be in the conversation. She absolutely deserves to be in that race. And I hope, even if she doesn't win National Player of the Year, she maybe has a Final Four MVP in her horizon over the course of the next handful of weeks. Big Ten tournament, for those of you concerned or interested, it's going to be in Minneapolis. Indiana will be the #1 seed. Looking forward to seeing the Hoosiers take the field down in that tournament before going on to the NCAA tournament. Indiana did issue a notice ahead of time here with the first round and the second round of the NCAA tournament coming up from March 17th to March 20th. Get your ticket requests in right now. The balconies will be general admission. Again, in women's basketball, the top 4 seeds in each region host the round of 64 and the round of 32. Indiana will absolutely be one of those teams coming up in the NCAA tournament. So shout out to the Hoosiers. Wonderful to see their success. There's so much more for them to accomplish. If you somehow have not tuned in to this team yet, I implore you do so as early as Sunday when the Hoosiers take on Iowa in the regular season finale. That'll be an ESPN game. And then, of course, the Big Ten tournament fully on BTN before the NCAA tournament, which will be on the ESPN family of networks. So Hoosiers, keep up the great work. We're paying attention to you. We're watching you. We're loving you. Great work out of the Indiana women's team. Before we talk about the men's program, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. this is more of a tip of the cap here. It's really exciting to see the Indiana softball program and Indiana baseball program up and running. The season is underway. I saw Indiana snag the finale of their 3-game series against Auburn over the course of the weekend. It's never easy when you open on the road in the SEC. Also, a big shout out to the Indiana swimming and diving program for going through the Big Ten championships. Now, the women's team was in action in the Big Ten championships last week. It's now time for the men's team to try to do that damage in the Big Ten tournament. They're in the Big Ten championship. They're on championships on their side. Big specific shout out to Anna Peplowski, who was named the swimmer of the Big Ten championships last week for the Hoosiers. Folks, a reminder, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for The Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at IndianaHQ and at The Hoosier Sound. And this part is important. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That kind of support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans, such as yourself. All right, guys, let's talk about the men's program here, okay? It's not as bright and sunny and rosy. It's not that terrible either. All right, let's be fair. Okay, let's be honest. The team's still a top 25 team. This team's going to be a top 4, top 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Over the course of the last week, they beat Illinois, lost at Michigan State. Charlie, you were there for the Illinois game at Assembly Hall. I know, like a lot of us, you were tuned into watching Indiana at Michigan State last night. What are your main takeaways from what you saw over the course of the last week? The Hoosiers split the games, lost yesterday in some tough circumstances, but how do you feel seeing what Indiana did over the course of the last couple of games?
Neither game was pretty by any means. I'll start by saying that one thing that really sticks out to me that kind of makes me upset, that really showed down the stretch against Illinois, or I guess not down the stretch, but coming out of halftime against Illinois, was the Hoosiers' inability to make a shot. I have never seen this men's team struggle this much to consistently find a basket when they need it most, which is upsetting, but it's a reality, especially against Illinois. I guess not as much against Michigan, because when you're down by, I guess they were up before the half, but
yeah, it took
in a comeback kind of victory against Illinois. When you're down and making a run, and you need a bucket, and you shoot 5 and you miss 5 out of 6 field goals in a row, and you let the other team get up by 9, 10 double digits, it's just something that you can't come back from. I don't know how they did it. I really don't. It was something to watch. Watching the energy in Assembly Hall was off the chains as the Hoosiers were moving up and closing on the Illinois. But against MSU, it was just unfortunate timing, I'd like to say. Being up by that, not that much before half, but losing a lead like that and then kind of not adjusting or adjusting the wrong way at halftime and just falling apart was scary to watch. Because if that can happen against MSU, given the circumstances, still, if that happens against a team like MSU, not that MSU's a terrible team, but it could be round of 64, round of 32, and the same thing happens where IU gets behind and can't pull themselves out. So,
yeah, it's not encouraging, as Charlie just mentioned, to take a lead like that at Michigan State, and then not only see it slip away, but you really didn't see too many adjustments. And I mean, Matt, there's one side of the coin here where you say, look, Michigan State's first home game since the tragedy in East Lansing. I don't think Kansas or Houston or UCLA would have gone to Michigan State and won on Tuesday night. But with that said, I think there's the other side of the coin here that have frustrated a lot of people who follow us, at least on Indiana HQ, where they're saying you had a lead in this game and you could have pulled a quad 1 road win out. Why the heck couldn't you grab a rebound? Why couldn't you get any production out of your reserves? How do you look at this game? Is it a loss that doesn't affect the ledger too much, or are there issues here that you need to see fixed right away?
I don't know if the issues can be fixed, without Well, I'll just go this way. The issues for IU is a lack of, I can't believe I'm saying this, but a lack of depth and a couple players having a bit of a slump slash are extremely tired. And I don't think anybody's gonna blame Trace Jackson Davis for being tired, but you can just watch it in the way he played. Like Jackson Kohler is not a world beater. Like he has moments where he's really good. Don't get me wrong. I have watched a ton of Michigan State this year, but he's not the player that we saw last night. Okay, he's just not. He's not the player we saw at all. And to be honest, um, it's not like Trace was the player we saw last night either. And that's mostly down to I think he's a bit tired. Tamar Bates is having an extremely bad slump at the worst time. He had that one game against Michigan State at home. And my Michigan State friends, text me about it all the time. How's Tamar doing? Because he literally, he had like a Justin Smith game, right? And then he's gone on this run where he is just every time he touches the ball, it's like I don't know, my eyes bleed a bit, because it's like he's either falling on the ground and trying to do a spin move, falling over. He's missing multiple 3-pointers in a row and just taking bad shots. That's a lazy pass. He dribbles it off his foot. It's almost like he's snake bitten, right? And then you add in, I think Miller Kopp's defense has taken a bit of a turn for the worse. I think, Jalen Hood-Schifino is not being as efficient as he once was. Race Thompson is still clearly not the Race Thompson of old, and I don't think we'll ever have that Race Thompson back. Players are underperforming. They're still winning games though, because this is a good team, right? And there's good players, right? And so again, you might ask me, okay, I've laid out, kind of the problems, some of the more individual issues. The staff I don't think is running the correct plays. I don't think they trust the players. I don't think the players trust the staff right now. And those are all some serious issues. I think all of these things get cured once Xavier Johnson comes back. Because again, you watched the team play earlier on this year, they were pretty dominant when they had Xavier Johnson in the lineup outside of the two absolute nightmare games.
When Jalen Hood-Schifino was not available.
Exactly. When the team is fully healthy and all together and the puzzle pieces and Lego pieces are all stacked on top of each other the way that they're supposed to go, this team plays well. They also, run efficiently, right? There was, if you look at when IU had the lead and when IU gave up the lead, it happens to coincide when Jalen Hood-Schifino was playing and when Jalen Hood-Schifino was not playing, right? Again, having a point guard on this roster, I know this is just, breaking news to people in 2023, but a basketball team needs a point guard, and this team only has one guy that can play point guard. And he's not even a point guard, guys. He's a combo who didn't really play a ton of point in high school, played mostly off ball or as secondary creator for his team. And he's being forced to play pure point on this team. And he's done a fantastic job, right? He's done a great job. He's done a great job, and that has now rocketed up his NBA draft stock, rightfully so. But we're still missing our true point guard and our alpha guard, right? And so again, we've been missing him for a while. Now, the good news is he will be coming back. I'm going to assume if it's not next game, it's the game after for Xavier Johnson, because he's been tweeting up a storm over the last not even just a couple hours.
We'll see. Just to cut in there, Mike Woodson scheduled to speak to the media on Thursday morning. We'll see if there's an update coming out of that. Stay tuned.
I would say personally,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Just follow us on Twitter, of course, to keep up with that. But also, seriously, like I would be mentally prepared, for Woodson to say one thing and then for him to show up in uniform at Purdue. Right. If he has a good couple of days of practice, I would totally expect that to happen. Is he going to play starters minute when he comes back? Probably not. But that also means he'll come in and be able to be a point guard, either whether he's starting or he's off the bench. The team will always be able to have a point guard on the floor, and the offense changes dramatically. There's way more dynamism in the offense. You'll be able to see lineups where Trace can get a break, because then you have the two-man game of Malik Renew and Jalen Hood-Schifino out there so that Trace, can get a breather. You have a two-man game of Race Thompson and Xavier Johnson out there so Trace can get a break. So he's not playing 40 minutes a game, right? Trace had in the last, what was the stat? Like the last 5 games, he's rested 5 minutes or something that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. That's absurd. It takes a toll on his body that is just remarkable that he's even standing at this point. I think back to my own personal athletic ventures. I struggled with shin splints because I was a track runner. And if I ran a little bit too much and I got a little bit too tired, my legs would start screaming at me, so much so that I had to be pushed around the school in a wheelchair because it hurt so much to walk. And I was basically taking an ice bath every 3 hours. It's like that kind of pain and physical determination that it takes for somebody to play through just pure exhaustion. That's what you're seeing Trace play through recently. Again, it was why he's an all-time great at IU, and it just sucks that the teams that have been built around him haven't been fantastic. But the team, and the positive news of all this is that you're getting the guy back that is the solution.
Yes.
I think the staff will be able to put more things back on the table for the team to run, given that they will have a point guard on the floor at all times and not just Trey Galloway, who I thought has been also a decent stopgap.
Sure.
While we've had this, this issue with Xavier Johnson's injury. And this is not, again, this problem is not new, but it's coming to a head now because the guys are getting so tired trying to play through the problems that his absence has caused. And the good news is that as it's coming to a head, the answer is there. Now, my thing with Xavier Johnson coming back is how's the minutes going to look? Who is he going to take away from? And how fast can he look closer to 95, 100%? Right? Because again, he's coming off months. He broke a foot. He's going to be, that's going to be a little awkward for him.
I'm no doctor. That sounds tough.
It sounds tough. And also, he hasn't played. He's going to be rusty, right? So how fast can he shake off that rust? Because there's big games here.
Huge.
You have at Purdue, then 2 games, home, Iowa and Michigan. Hopefully he gets those 2 games to get right. I think the Michigan game is very winnable on senior night, of course. And I think, again, the Iowa game is very winnable. They should be really pumped up to play Iowa, given the way the Iowa game went last time we played them. And then they have the Big Ten tournament games, which hopefully will have a easier game in the first game to kind of, again, get warmed up in. But then it's immediately into tough game after tough game into the NCAA tournament. That's it. That's the season. So, again, he's got maybe, if he comes back for Purdue, let's say, he's got maybe 5, 6, 7-ish games if they go really far in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I don't know.
To kind of get back, get healthy and get right and shake off that rust before you're into the last games of the season, right? The NCAA, the do or die, right? So I'm going to be really interested to see how the staff brings him back and what that leash is like for him.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting, right? Remember, Indiana will have a few days of practice before the Big Ten tournament. They'll have a few days of practice before the round of 64 and in contrast to last year where, they had some time before the Big Ten tournament, but of course, Indiana had a first 4 game in March Madness. Now they'll have some extra practice time there in between the end of the regular season and the start of the big dance. To me, your answer to from whom does Xavier Johnson take away minutes? The answer to that question, I think, at this point on February 22nd, is everyone who is on the bench that is not contributing. And really, you see Malik Renew doing some things on the court. I think he's the only reserve that you're seeing on the court over the last few weeks that should still get a good chunk of playing time the rest of the way. And the fact of the matter is, the end of February is not a time to figure out and to experiment and to give people long leashes on how to dig out of a tough stretch of games. Okay. And that's not just something that applies to Tamar Bates. It also applies to Jordan Geronimo, who hasn't done all that much over the last few games. That applies to CJ Gunn, who isn't finding the court. It applies to Caleb Banks, who's not really doing all that much in his time on the court. I'm sitting here and I'm saying, look, whether it's Bates or Geronimo or Gunn or Leal or Banks or whoever, those guys, I just don't know how much you can play them the rest of the way. And if you're telling me I instead get the payoff of integrating Xavier Johnson back into my lineup, that's a pretty big payoff. And when I look, okay, and I think honestly, I think a national championship is still within the realm of realistic possibility for this team. Now, that's going to sound crazy to a lot of people, but given the field in college basketball, Indiana's already faced Kansas and Arizona. Indiana's beaten Purdue. Indiana knows what the cream of the crop looks like, and I don't think they're scared. When I look at the last 6 teams to play in a national championship game, that's Kansas, North Carolina, Baylor, Gonzaga, Virginia, Texas Tech. All those teams, they're playing 6, 7-man rotations. And I don't know why Mike Woodson should stretch his team beyond that. Now, look, if you have guys who are banged up or tired or fatigued or injured, that changes things. But to me, in a situation where everyone's available and everyone's healthy, I think you go out and you trot out a 7-man rotation of Trace Jackson Davis, Hood Schifino, Johnson, Galloway, Kopp, Thompson, and Renew. And I think that's all you do. And you can figure out Tamar Bates in the offseason. You can figure out Jordan Geronimo in the offseason and CJ Gunn in the offseason. You can figure out who's coming in and who's going out and all that after the season's done. But Charlie, we asked that same question to all of our listeners on the Hoosier Sound Weekly podcast poll. Would you be okay if Mike Woodson ran with the 7-man rotation until the season ended? And it's a split vote, okay? And I don't blame people. 46% say yes. 52% say no. 2% say cut it even shorter. And you don't even make it 7 people in the rotation. I mean, how do you look at this? Do you still feel like there's time to allow Tamar Bates, Jordan Geronimo, and maybe get something from the CJ Gunn, Anthony Leal, Caleb Banks group? Or do you condense it and say, look, we got to go with the guys that can produce, that we can rely on at this point?
Look, you got to go with the guys that you rely on. Is that what you agree with, Charlie?
You got to go with the guys you rely on.
Yeah. Like what? Like I don't really
naturally.
Know
yes. Okay. The answer is yeah. You want to go with the guys you rely on. It depends on who you are. Who you rely on is different than who I rely on. And I have trust in Tamar Bates.
Okay.
I know.
Oh.
After MSU,
okay.
I'm well aware.
You were there. You were there.
Games.
In Charlie's defense, he's the only one of the 3 of us who was there at that game.
Okay. I don't want to go ahead.
Just let me get to where I'm going.
Okay, go. Take with the run with it. I want to see what you say.
I've seen Tamar Bates play his mind out. And you know where it comes from? It comes from players' trust in him. Mike Woodson's trust in him, which he has stated clearly at every turn. Mike Woodson is behind Tamar Bates. Jalen Hood Schifino is behind Tamar Bates, and Trace Jackson Davis is behind Tamar Bates. That's all you need. I know that he wasn't really performing. Performing isn't even the word. He wasn't really playing basketball against MSU. But I think a lot's going to be solved when Xavier Johnson enters the chat. And I think it's because right now there's too much pressure on Tamar Bates. He thrives when he's sitting in the corner waiting for a 3-ball. He thrives when, I don't know, let's say Xavier Johnson needs to come out and the team needs some more energy. Those are the situations that he thrives in. Now, I don't see him playing 30 minutes. I don't think anybody else did. That's not what we meant when we said, who should we rely on? We were looking for 15 to 20 minutes of energy out of somebody. And I think down the stretch with Xavier Johnson back, that is the key. If Xavier Johnson doesn't return, that would be awful. God forbid. But if Xavier Johnson doesn't return in a timely manner, Tamar Bates is out of the equation. I don't see Tamar Bates being effective. Nearly as effective as a 6-man, 7-man roster would be. But that's my argument for Tamar Bates, is that when he's used in the capacity that he's meant to be used for, showing up to start a streak, maybe just little things that change the game by 1-2 points, finding momentum, being an energizer, not really being a role player, because I don't really think that's what he is. I think that he knows his place, and that we kind of saw him thrown into another role against MSU, and it clearly crashed and burned. So I think that an 8-man roster with Tamar Bates is what's going to get IU as far as they can go.
All right. Well, I will I'll counter that. Because I disagree.
It's
Uh
tough.
I again, this is not me saying that I'm selling my Tamar Bates stock, right? Because again, I was a big proponent of this team's ceiling goes as Tamar Bates goes, right? Because again, if he's a guy that can come in and be a threat off the bench and give you, an ability to score at 3 different levels and just be an energy guy, that's been great. But look, so far this season, he's been very hit or miss, extremely hit or miss. He's currently slumping. His defense is a gigantic negative. And he honestly plays a role in a position in which we already have people that are very reliable in that role. So, for instance, I would say when we get Xavier Johnson back, the minutes get taken away from Tamar because you still have to give minutes to guys like Miller Kopp. You still got to give minutes to guys like Jalen Hitchfino.
Yeah.
And you still got to give minutes to guys like Trey Galloway, who, by the way, had a pretty decent game at Michigan
I think
State out of all
Galloway
the
is
guys.
Indiana's third most valuable player.
I agree with that. I completely agree with that. Again, he's a guy that's been forced to play mainly point guard at times as a guy that is he's just not a point guard, right? And everybody coming into the season, including myself, was harping on how great it's going to be to have a guy like Galloway who's going to be able to play make as a secondary playmaker. The key word there is secondary, right?
Yes,
He's not a primary playmaker. That's not his mojo. And when he was being used as a secondary playmaker, he had ridiculous assist to turnover numbers. I mean, like I think he went the first like 9-10 games of the season without turning the ball over. It was something ridiculous.
It was a really strong assist to turnover.
It was like, yeah,
it was crazy.
I mean, he took care of the ball and
he's still hitting 50% from three.
And he was still hitting 50% from three. He's a really, really good, piece of the puzzle. And then it all went out the door when Xavier Johnson went back. So yes. I do agree. Again, the team is going to be better when you get Xavier Johnson back, and I made that point earlier. I don't think Tamar Bates is that guy just because I think there's guys in front of him. I would say that guy for me that I trust to give you minutes off the bench, for me is a healthy Jordan Geronimo. For me, he's a guy that kind of changes the way IU can guard teams. Again, we saw him playing as a 3 last night. Was it great? No, but it's an angle that the team can go with. He's more athletic. I think he gives you better rebounding, something that Indiana was struggling with last game. I think he gives you some hustle and occasionally can hit an outside shot or two. That's something that, again, when Race Thompson sits down, when Malik Renew isn't playing his A game, is somebody that can kind of give you a bit of a mix-up. And I guess you could say the same thing about Tamar Bates as somebody that give you a bit of a mix-up when Miller Kopp's not playing well and when Trey Galloway doesn't have a shot that night. But I feel like, again, you can have a stopgap in that situation where Miller Kopp's gravity is still going to affect people. And Jalen Hood-Schifino can step up into those and get those points. But I don't think there's anybody on this roster that can take Geronimo's spot away from him as a kind of sort of energy rebounding guy that can do a couple different things on offense as well.
Yeah, it's a tough decision for Mike Woodson. I just thought it was interesting when I went back and looked at teams that made the national title game, that these smart coaches, right, talking about the Mark Few's and Scott Drews and the Bill Selfs of the world, at least in March Madness, they're not experimenting. They're saying, look, it's time for 6, it's time for 7. That's the vast majority. 95+% of our minutes are coming from 6 or 7 guys. It's interesting. I'm not sure how Mike Woodson will approach it. Again, this is the first season Indiana's played in, has gone straight into the round of 64 in a long time. Okay, so we'll see what happens. I will say there's a large middle ground, okay, between sitting Tamar Bates the rest of the season, if Indiana wants to do that, or Jordan Geronimo or CJ Gunn or Caleb Banks the rest of the season, and then having all those guys transferred, okay? And I think there's a large middle ground, okay? Sorry if this is crazy in 2023, where you can maybe, possibly, just take a chill pill in the offseason and stay with the coach that recruited you and just take your time and figure things out in the offseason and learn how to improve. Okay, KJ Adams played like 2 minutes in the national title game last year for Kansas. He's one of their most important players right now. So look, just because you're not getting playing time in your first year or two doesn't mean you got to go run out the door. Mike Woodson knows what he's doing. We'll see how Indiana plays this over the course of the rest of the season. Quickly, folks, it's time for a social media shout out before we take a look at Indiana's game at Purdue on Saturday night. We are going to tip our cap to the Miami Heat. Who thought we were going to get to this? Why, you must ask? Is it related to, I don't know, Pat Riley or Shaq? No, none of that. Miami went out over the course of the last week and they snagged Cody Zeller off the free agency list. And Zeller joined former Hoosier Victor Oladipo in Miami to join forces down there in South Beach. Zeller will wear number 44 with the Heat. Now, all of a sudden, the Miami Hoosiers are a thing. If you go over to the Miami Heat official Twitter account, there's actually a post that they made a couple of days ago, in fact, just yesterday on Tuesday, where they tagged Indiana men's basketball and say, how's this for a throwback? And you saw Dwayne Wade in an Indiana shirt, and you saw Victor Oladipo and Cody Zeller all in the same picture. It was pretty awesome to see. And of course, the Heat are, a big following, a massive fan base. Matt's one of them here on our podcast. They have 5 million Twitter followers, and all of them saw Indiana men's basketball tagged on the official Twitter account. Wonderful to see. I saw Tom Crean retweeting. I saw Christian Watford retweeting it. A lot of Hoosier love there for the Heat now as they go into the home stretch of their season with a couple Hoosiers, Zeller and Oladipo, on their roster. Folks, a quick heads up, shouting out our social media channels. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube at Indiana HQ. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
Exactly. You can find us there. We can also be reached at the Hoosier Sound across the different social media platforms. See Charlie at drop off here for the final segment as Indiana heads to Mackey Arena in West Lafayette to take on the Purdue Boilermakers Saturday night. Of course, Indiana knocked off Purdue in the first matchup between the teams, just in case you may have forgotten. Of course he didn't. Indiana won 79-74 in Bloomington back on February 4th. Purdue had just one loss before that game. And what's interesting is Purdue has actually dropped 3 of their last 5. Their 2 wins were home against Iowa and home against Ohio State. Now, interestingly, Purdue will have 6 days off before taking on the Hoosiers Saturday night in Mackey. Indiana, of course, coming off the loss at Michigan State on Tuesday night. Purdue still 4th in KenPom, 7th offensively, 22nd defensively. They play slow. They win the foul game on both sides of the court. They're going to have more free throws than Indiana in this game by quite a margin. Matt, this game's going to be different than the first time Indiana played Purdue. Do you think, basically, what do you think Indiana has to do in order to have a shot at winning this game?
Well, one, they have to repeat a similar performance to the first game. And by that, I mean Trace is going to have to play significantly better than he did against Michigan State. I don't think I'm crazy in saying that. I also think, again, they're going to need a performance from a guy like Miller Kopp or the aforementioned Tamar Bates or Trey Galloway. That's going to have to blow some people's expectations of what they can bring to the table, through the roof, right? They're gonna have to play out of their minds to get it done on the road. And all of that together, they are going to probably need, a nice break or two as far as officiating. So again, to say that it is a monumental task to win, would be a bit of an understatement. I think again, this is the toughest game of the year for IU.
It is.
Straight up, this is the hardest game of the year. I will take an argument that at Kansas was the hardest game of the year, but either way, this is the hardest game of the Big Ten season, following, in my opinion, what was the second or third hardest game in the Big Ten season. This is just a rough 2-game stretch for IU that I think even before the season started, I probably would have given them either a 1-1 or an 0-2 week in this. This is just, it's tough. It's tough.
It is. Now, what's interesting is, Purdue is not playing basketball at the same level as they were before the first match between these teams. And I think Purdue's a little vulnerable, and the way this crowd is going to be at Mackey on Saturday night, where if you can make them nervous, if you can make them a little bit flustered, based on how these last few games have gone for the Boilermakers, the home faithful may get a little bit antsy. Okay, and so for Indiana, much like their approach in the game last season in West Lafayette, I think this one has to be just hang around, just keep fighting. Purdue will go on their runs, and they'll take a 10-point lead, or they'll take a 12-point lead. Just keep hitting back, keep fighting back, keep punching back. If you can make this, a 10-point game with 6 minutes to go, a 6-point game with 3 minutes to go, just keep them nervous, just keep them hooked in just a little bit, because if you can make that happen, Purdue has shown a penchant this season, especially recently, to go stretches of minutes where they play really poor basketball. Now, it happens more frequently when they're on the road, as a lot of us saw in early February, but they've gone through multiple stretches recently where they turn the ball over a lot, where they get a little bit slumpy and slouchy on the court when things aren't going their way. And that's exactly the kind of stuff Indiana has to capitalize on Saturday night. It goes without saying that if the Hoosiers are going to win against Purdue and get a season sweep, they're going to need a big game from Trace Jackson-Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino. And especially, if you ask me, Hood-Schifino, because Jameer Young was a key factor for Maryland in their win over Purdue back on February 16th. For Northwestern, in the Wildcats win over Purdue, it was Boo Buie who went for 26. And so, look, I'm looking for, it just goes without saying, Trace Jackson-Davis has to be a major contributor for Indiana, but I'm really paying attention to Jalen Hood-Schifino once again, because as we found out in the first match between these teams in early February, if you can neutralize Fletcher Lawyer as well as Braden Smith, all of a sudden Zach Edey's life gets tougher, and all of a sudden you can see yourself in an interesting game here where it's a seesaw affair or it's a close one. That's sort of instance there Indiana could get themselves into. Now, Matt KenPom has Purdue projected to win this one 75-67. Who do you have winning this game and by how much?
I think Indiana, for once, I feel like covers against KenPom. I still have them losing again. I think I said it because we didn't talk. I don't know if we predicted this game on the last podcast. I don't even know if we predicted the Illinois game.
We did. We did predict that one. Neither, I believe you had Indiana beating Purdue, and I had Indiana losing to Purdue.
Did I have Indiana beating Purdue?
You did.
Man, I must
because
have
because in that week, I vividly remember you had Indiana going 2-0. You had us winning at Maryland and then beating Purdue, and I had Indiana going 0-2 when I had us losing at Maryland.
No. I meant, yeah, that's true. Yeah, but I
oh no,
I meant last podcast. Did we do the predict the MSU game?
No, we did not do that. You're correct.
Yeah. So that was on Big Ten Coast to Coast that I predicted that IU would go 0-2 this week.
Got it.
I predicted they probably would. I know, but again, I saw that's with the context of the shooting at Michigan State.
Yeah.
I thought, again, that's probably a game that Indiana doesn't win just because of factors kind of just outside of sports.
And Michigan State's really good. Like, Indiana's not playing crappy teams. Like,
okay,
I would right?
I wouldn't go as far as saying Michigan State is really good.
Well, they're not. They're not.
Michigan State's not bad. No, Michigan State is not bad. They are just not really good.
All right, fine.
I think there's a fine line there in adjectives and ways to describe the team.
Hold on. At the same time, they're projected as an 8 seed. All right, like
But that's not that's not really good. Really good is like where
Whatever.
Indiana's at, which is like 4 to 6 seedish. And then there's
355 teams.
then there's
in
elite.
D1. They're
That's
32nd.
true. Okay. They're really good when you talk about the fact that they are towards the top. They are not really good when you talk about where they are sitting at compared to where people thought they would be at the beginning of the year.
Sure.
And this is a team that people mostly thought would be sitting around where Indiana's at now, like a 4-5 seed in the tournament, right? And they're well below that at this point. So
yeah, it's true.
Again, IU lost to a team that is decent, and again lost for some factors that are outside of basketball. And now you're going and playing, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most people, the team that's been the best team in the country through most of the year. I don't think they're playing the best right now,
Correct.
which I think benefits Indiana. But again, the team that has been the best in the country through most of the season, maybe I could see the argument outside of Houston. So again, how does Indiana go and take one on the chin from this team? Because again, I predict them to lose this game. I think they'll probably end up losing by 3 or 4. I think it'll be very reminiscent of the Purdue game last year, where Indiana was just close, just didn't execute enough down the stretch, made it a little bit interesting, and just Purdue kind of gets, a call here or there that kind of swings the game in their favor. That's going to happen when you're playing a top 10 team on the road, in a hostile environment. I just want to see how the team responds after laying an egg. I just hope to God that they don't go out there and just get played off the court within the first 5 minutes at Purdue. I'm just asking for some fight there. That's it.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a component of weathering the storm on Saturday night. Again, I don't expect Indiana to take a 9-point lead in the first half, like Indiana did against Michigan State on Tuesday. But I'm getting some tightness vibes from Purdue. I'm getting some struggle vibe. I mean, I'm watching these teams, and I'll tell you guys, of all the podcasts you listen to, I'm not sure you'll be on a podcast where you hear or see 3 people who watch the Big Ten more than this. Okay, and we watched almost every Big Ten game that's been played this season. All right, like beyond just Indiana. Okay, I mean, I may even be underselling that. Purdue is not the same team that they were
when they came to Bloomington
3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, no.
And it's one thing if you went to Maryland and got pipped at the buzzer like Purdue had happened to them against Rutgers for their only loss a long time ago. Things have changed, and teams have figured a little bit more how to guard Zach Edey, and they figured a little more how to guard Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith. And make no mistake about it, Mike Woodson's got 4 days here, 3 full days to prepare. And he's going to be looking at the tape. He's going to be looking at the tape from Chris Collins and how he strategized against Purdue, and Kevin Willard from Maryland and how he strategized against Purdue, and Steve Peichel and how he strategized. And of course, reflecting back on the tape from Indiana's win over the Boilermakers. And what this all comes down to saying is, Indiana, I think, has a major issue in this game as far as rebounding the basketball, because Purdue is so strong at winning the glass.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the points of emphasis coming out of the Michigan State game, I feel, will be Mike Woodson telling his team to figure out rebounding. And I think Indiana keeps that rebounding battle close. And I think they keep the 3-point battle close. And I think they keep the free throw shooting battle close. And I actually have Indiana going into Mackey Arena and coming out with a 2-point win at Purdue by a final of 68-66. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think one of the fundamental flaws for Purdue, as great as they are, is they play at a very slow tempo. They don't allow enough possessions in a game for them to really exert their dominance. Indiana's going to allow this game to go at a slow pace. Indiana's going to be fine playing deliberately. I don't think they want to play up and down, frantic basketball. I I think they're going to be comfortable in these surroundings. Now, initially in the game, it's going to be tough. Going to have to face a crazy crowd. It's going to be madness, and it's going to be ridiculous, and all this is concerned true. But as crazy as it sounds, just a few days after losing at Michigan State by 15, I have Purdue. I have Indiana going into Purdue, coming away with an upset.
Look, you're insane, but I can see the angle where you're coming from. It would be amazing if Indiana ends up sweeping Purdue in basketball in both sports after all the smack that Purdue fans talked about when they got ranked number 1 to Indiana. That would be nice. But I think you are, as a person I know who has watched a ton of Big Ten games, you are misleading yourself. Winning on the road in the Big Ten is at this point it's damn near impossible.
Very difficult.
Okay, like what is it? The Big Ten teams are like 32-5.
Yeah,
at home over in February
recently. Yeah. I believe Big Ten road teams have the 5th lowest winning percentage of all conferences. So even if you zoom out to, it's it's a third. It's the 3rd lowest win percentage out of all conferences.
Exactly. So again, for from all our lovely viewers out there,
all of them,
Nathan has got a pair of nice, beautiful, rosy crimson glasses on right now. Don't get your. All I'm saying is Nathan might be right, and he'll end up looking like a genius next podcast if it's true. Like we'll do an emergency podcast after it, and he gets to gloat for an hour about it. But I would be extremely surprised if you are right.
There's absolutely an outcome here where Indiana loses by 25. There's no question. Okay, there's absolutely an outcome here where Indiana loses like 83-58.
Yeah,
okay. It really is.
Yeah,
I think Indiana. Look, they looked horrible losing at Maryland a few days before they beat Purdue.
Okay? It looked awful.
It was the worst game. And very, very.
Okay.
I mean, this is, if you've hung around to this point, you deserve this conspiracy theory. I think Indiana is absolutely atrocious in games that tip off at 9:15 at night. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
The good news is this one's a 7:30 Eastern tip. Okay. I mean, Indiana's 3 losses since the Renaissance have all been 9:15 Eastern tip-offs. So all I'm saying is, if Indiana keeps this game interesting, I'm talking, again, within 8 points at the under 4, within 6 points, like 2:30 left, Purdue gets tight. And again, if they win by 25 on Saturday night, it would be the least surprising thing in the world. But I also see a number of outcomes here where Indiana doesn't necessarily have to play a perfect game, and they come away with a win in West Lafayette. And if that happens, boy, the vibes quickly turn in Hoosier Nation. Matt, as we wind down on this Wednesday night, a lot to digest from what we've seen across women's and men's basketball. What's on your mind here as we close up shop? What are your final thoughts here on this episode of the Hoosier Sound?
Again, I've seen some people saying that the sky is falling for IU basketball. They're going to be fine. Again, they could lose at Purdue, and I think they're still going to be projected as a 4 or 5 seed. Like Indiana is comfortably there. Now, if they go and lose the next 2 games after that, you might see them tumble, and you might see me start, sounding some alarms. But again, it's there's 3 really tough road games on the schedule this year. It was at the Rack, at Mackey, and then East Lansing, and
Kansas too.
And I can't. Well, I mean, in the Big Ten slate is what I was trying to say. Yeah, in the Big Ten slate, there was 3 really tough road games that are even on a good year hard to win. It would be nice if Indiana could go 1-2 in those games. But still, I don't think it's the end of the world if Indiana goes and splits the season series with Purdue, with a chance, by the way, to probably end up playing them again in the Big Ten tournament in about 2 weeks' time.
Let's do it.
So again, the season is not over if IU loses at Purdue. It's not even close. Like I don't want to see anybody even tweet that, because it's just false, misleading information. And everything is okay even if we lose by 30. However, a win, I think, will cement Trace Jackson Davis's legacy as a guy that finally got over the hump to becoming an all-time Indiana great. He's going to be recommended and should be uttered in the same breath as a lot of IU greats for the things he's done in 4 years at IU. But I think for a lot of people, it will confirm them if he can go from a guy that hadn't beaten Purdue to winning, 3 out of his last 4 games against the Boilermakers. That would probably do it in the eyes of a lot of IU fans. And plus, it'd be a beautiful send-off for Trace if he can just get his last Purdue win in Mackey. That would be sick.
Yeah. Oh, it would be. Oh, it certainly would be. And again, I could see Indiana getting destroyed, but I can also see a pretty clear angle for an Indiana win. And so, we're just gonna let the players play on Saturday night, see how that goes. Hopefully, Larry Serrato is nowhere within a 50-mile radius of West Lafayette on Saturday night. That's just my personal opinion. It's interesting that you mentioned the whole aspect of Trace Jackson Davis and his legacy, depending on or with Saturday night's game playing some kind of role. Because actually, it's interesting to me. I don't know if Indiana fans feel the same way. They probably don't. I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure like how important these final 3 regular season games are. It sucks to say, but it's strange because Indiana hasn't been in this
for
position.
his legacy or for the
season? I'm not even sure about his legacy. I'm talking about from an Indiana standpoint, from an IU basketball standpoint, from the program standpoint. Like, Indiana hasn't been in this position in a long time, really since 2016. We're like the last 3 games.
Yeah.
And even in 2016, Indiana was in a Big Ten title race. In 2013, Indiana was in a Big Ten title race. I am, with enough precincts reporting, I'm taking them out of the Big Ten title race again. So with these like 3 regular season games left, and I know it's a rivalry game, and I know senior day's coming up, and I get it. Like, if Indiana loses out, there's still a 7, maybe an 8 at worst. I don't really know how important these 3 games are now. You probably want to show up at the Big Ten tournament. You obviously need to play your best basketball in the NCAA tournament. And so that's the goal here. Whatever happens over these next couple of weeks, the end goal is for Indiana to make sure that they're playing their best basketball when the brackets are revealed in 2.5 weeks? I think it's 2.5 weeks from today on Selection Sunday. But folks, that about wraps it up for our 285th episode of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, please be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love, go Hoosiers.